Right. Right. Good morning, everyone. Back to Shmuel Bet. Jeffrey has returned from his trip and wants to know where we're up to. So, where are we up to? Well, you've missed all the best bits, Jeffrey, because we have spent the last few weeks while you've been away discussing the story of David and Bathsheba. And we have finished the salacious part, and we're now going to come to the response to David's behavior. We went in great detail into the story from David's perspective, from Bathsheba's perspective, and we were pretty much, I think, agreed all round that she didn't come out of it entirely
Innocent.
clear
Innocent.
either. And we looked at it from Yoav's perspective. Yoav was the general who, at David's behest, engineered Uriah's death. And we also talked about it from Uriah's perspective as a loyal member of David's army, or as a traitor, depending on which bit of the Gomorrah you went by. Michael Krauss was very unhappy with quite a lot of what we said, wasn't buying much of it. But let's see how we go on now, because we've finished all that. And what we're going to do now, we're going to look at chapter 12. Chapter 12 begins with a very famous parable given to David by the prophet Natan. Natan was the prophet at the time of David, and we had this idea, we have this thing there where we've got a king and a prophet. It's like, I don't know whether it's the same sort of thing, but it's a bit of a check and a balance. It's a bit like the House of Lords and the House of Commons, I think. I've not thought this through yet. That just popped into my head. But the prophet was there to make sure that the king didn't overstep the mark in his authority, because, of course, the king was a dictator in a way. I mean, but the prophet was there to be the balance to the king's power. We saw it with King Saul, who was the prophet who balanced out King Saul's power.
Shmuel.
Shmuel,
Shmuel.
correct. Shmuel has passed on by this stage, and Natan has become the prophet at the time of David. So I'm going to share the screen with you. Those who've got a Tanakh in front of you, we're on chapter 12 of Shmuel Bet. Let me share that with you. And we will get Jeffrey to read for us. I'm going to get him to read the whole parable, which is up to verse 4, verses 1 to 4, and then we'll stop and discuss the parable before we see David's reaction to it. Okay, off you go, Jeffrey.
Hashem sent Natan to David. He came to him and told him, there were two men in one city, one rich and one poor. The rich man had very many sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one more small ewe that he had acquired. He raised it, and it grew up together with him and his children. It ate from his bread and drank from his cup, and lay in his bosom. It became like a daughter to him. A wayfarer came to the rich man. He was reluctant to take from his own sheep or cattle to prepare for the visitor who had come to him. So he took the poor man's ewe and prepared it for the man who had come to him.
Okay, what a story. Okay, what a schlechter this fellow is. Right? You've got a man. This is a story that David hears from Natan. But before we go into the story, let's just have a look at the first pasuk. Vayishlach Hashem et Natan el David. What word screams out at you there?
Ad Hashem,
Then
Vayishlach.
Vayishlach. Why?
Ugh.
Why Vayishlach? Why does that scream out at you, Peter?
Well, is God specifically sending Natan to rebuke David?
Yes, I think that's fairly clear. That's exactly what's going on. But why is Vayishlach such an important word here? Why doesn't it just say Vayomer Natan el David?
Something nasty is about to happen, or a nasty statement, or whatever.
Okay, let me remind you
Yeah.
by taking you back a chapter of a verb that was very prominent in this whole story. Okay, what was the story? The story was David was wandering around on his roof, and he saw this woman bathing. Verse 3, Vayishlach David. David sent and inquired about the woman. Verse 4, Vayishlach David Malachim. David sent messengers to get her, to take her. Okay, and she became pregnant. Vatishlach, and she sent a message to David saying that she was pregnant. Next one, Vayishlach David. Every single pasuk in our story has the verb to send. Do you remember we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, how when you start involving other people by sending messages to other folk instead of telling them yourself, word gets out, doesn't it? There are no secrets when you've got messengers involved. So every single pasuk here involves a messenger. Vayishlach, vayishlach, vayishlach. Again, that was the problem. You can see it all the way through this chapter. Now we come to our chapter, which is the rebuke of David. The very first word hits us in the face. Vayishlach Hashem et Natan el David. It's a midah keneged midah situation. Tanakh is telling us that this is the punishment of David came, or the rebuke of David came through a messenger, just as all the things that he had done wrong were done via messengers. So that's the first thing to point out. Okay, so now we've got the story itself. Now, do you think, I mean, it's hard to answer this because we know the story, but do you think that this is obvious that this is talking about David? Do you think that David should have twigged when Natan told him the story?
Yes.
No.
Well, that's good. We had one yes and one no. Right, let's deal with the yes first. Go on, Michael. Why yes?
Because you can read one into the other quite easily. It looks as though, here the guy took the man's sheep, whereas he had nothing else. Uriah had one wife and nothing else, where David had everything, and he took basically what was Uriah's. Now,
are you saying that because you know that it is a parable, or do you think that David really should have twigged?
I think he should have twigged.
Okay, Michael thinks he should have twigged. I'll come to you in a sec, Jeffrey. I think Jackie said no.
No, because David's so full of himself, he doesn't realise he's done anything wrong. So he's not really interested in these parables because it's nothing to do with him.
Okay, very interesting. I think the first part of what you said, I think may well be spot on. And in fact, one of the Mefarshim says exactly that. Let me just, we can't remember who it was now. Give me a second and I'll just look it up. I can't remember and I can't find it just now, but I'll find it. Anyway, one of the Mefarshim say exactly that not so much that he was full of himself, but he'd almost dismissed this. He'd repressed this whole episode. He'd done the sin. He knew it was a sin. He knew what he'd done wasn't right, but he'd managed to repress it. And that is sort of pretty much human nature, isn't it? We justify things that we've done wrong. And when we can't justify them, we tend to repress them out of our mind. We try and put them to the side and let's not think about all of that. The other thing that Michael, you might want to. Where's Michael? We still got him.
Yep.
Oh, there he is. Yeah. The other thing you might want to consider, Michael, is that David was, although he wasn't a judge, how do we know David wasn't a judge?
You can't be both the judge and the king.
Oh, very good, Michael. Excellent. Where did you learn that?
Sanhedrin?
Excellent. Well done. We did. We learned it in Sanhedrin a long, long time ago. You can't be a king and a judge. So he wasn't a judge. However, it would seem, and we know this from Shlomo as well, that there are times when cases are brought to the king to pass judgment. You know, the famous judgment of Solomon.
Yeah, Shlomo HaMelech, yeah.
Yeah, the famous judgment of Solomon, where he says, split the baby in two, is an example. So it was not, I don't think, entirely uncommon for cases to be brought to the king for him to make a decision. And David may well have just repressed this whole thing from his mind because he knew he'd really done wrong, and he sort of put it to the side, as it were. And he thinks that Natan is just coming with a case for him to pass an opinion on. That's a possibility that some of the Mepharshim speak about. But I think, we would say David's not an idiot. Surely he would have picked up that this is him. And I think it demonstrates the fact, and the fact is, he didn't, and we'll see that in the next couple of Pesukim. He didn't twig straight away, and then Natan had to spell it out to him, which I think demonstrates the ability of human beings to justify their own behavior. And we see this all the time. We've all done it. I'm sure. I'm not going to ask you to be to pour your secrets out in this shiur, but I'm sure you've all got times where you've done something wrong and you've tried to justify it in your own mind, and you managed to sort of repress the sin, as it were. And this is a demonstration here of how clever the human mind can be when it needs to be, when it wants to be. So I think that's an interesting psychological fact that we see here. The fact that David did not twig, even though, and I agree with you, Michael, I think, it is not exactly, wrapped up in difficult language. This is fairly clear. Jeffrey, you wanted to say something?
Well, it's a basic one of the Ten Commandments. You shouldn't covet someone else's wife, and it's blatant, and he had no right. What kind of an example is he setting?
Yeah, well, all of those things, right? It's more than one of the Ten Commandments, isn't it? He's done adultery, murder, and coveting.
Yeah.
At least 3 that I can think of.
Johnny?
Yes, Jackie.
What worries me is, why did the Almighty have to send an intermediary? Why didn't he go direct to David?
Okay, that's a fair question. And I think the answer is probably that at this point, at least, David didn't deserve a direct relationship with God. He sullied himself. And in the same way as the relationship between a king and a subject would be very precious to somebody. If you got a visit from the king, that would be something very special. If you got a visit from the king's emissary, it would also be special, but it would be less special. And I think you do see this situation in Tanakh where Hashem does not speak directly to folk when they have misbehaved. And I think that's probably as good an answer as we can get. Let's carry on and see what happens next. First of all, let's just have a look at the parable itself. The poor man had nothing save for one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and reared, and it grew up together with him and his sons. Now then, what does that tell you? He grew up with him and his sons, this little you.
It was an old lamb.
Like one of the family.
Yeah, he's got a family. So he must have had some other wives. So the fact that we said, and I think you said, Michael, that Uriah only had one wife, not necessarily the case from this parable. Okay, so that might have been a reason why David didn't twig. Okay. And then the wayfarer came. Who we know who in this parable, who is the rich man?
David.
King.
David. Who is the poor man?
Uriah.
Uriah. Who is the wayfarer? There came a wayfarer to the rich man, and this guy came, a visitor came, and the rich man, well, no, hang on. The rich man didn't want to take his own, didn't want to use his own money. He nicked somebody else's lamb to slaughter to give to this wayfarer. So, who, and I'll give you a clue, or what is the wayfarer?
Well,
Would it be the Almighty?
No, I don't think so.
Would it have been Joab when he returned with his soldiers triumphant?
I don't think so. Joab is in the story after the event. This is right at the beginning. This is what caused. Let me give you another clue. This wayfarer is what caused David to want. Oh no, the wayfarer is what caused the rich man to want to take the ewe of somebody else. So, what is the wayfarer in this parable?
Lust.
Yes, the Yetzer Hara, we would call it. The evil inclination. Yes, Michael, absolutely. Let me have a look. This is not me making up. I'm not clever enough for that. Have a look. There is a Gemara in Sukkah 52b. There it is. Amar Rava. Can you see it on screen? Yeah. Yeah. Amar Rava. Rava said, Batchila, in the beginning, Kra'o Heilech. In the beginning, he is called a traveler, meaning the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Ula Basof, and later on, Kra'o Oreach. Then he becomes a guest. Ula Basof, Kra'o Ish. And in the end, he's called a man. In other words, he takes root with you. And then it says, Shenema, as it says, Vayavo Heilech Leish Ha'ashir, Vayachamol Lakachat Mitzono Mivkaro, Lasot Laoreach. That's our pasuk. Let me take you back. Here it is. Here it is. Exactly those words. Vayavo Heilech. A wayfarer, a traveler came, Leish Ha'ashir, to the rich man, Vayachamol Lakachat Mitzono. And he didn't want to. He spared to take his own sheep and his own cattle, la'asot la'oreach, to make a meal for the guest. So now this fellow, this Yetzer Hara, who came just as a passerby, a heilech, he's a passerby to start with, he's now become a guest in your house, right? Habalo, who came to him, vayikach et kivsata ish, and he took the poor man's ewe, vayaaseha laish haba elav, and he prepared it for the man that had come to him. He's now, as the Gemara says, like a homeowner. He's taken over your home. He's a man. In other words, the evil inclination began as a traveler and gradually rose in prominence. This is the nature of the evil inclination. This is what this parable is trying to teach us, that if you invite this wayfarer, this Yetzer Hara, if you invite this Yetzer Hara into your life, and as it were, you give in to that lust that you were talking about, Michael, then he will take a hold of you. He will become not just a passerby who will go, he'll become a guest in your house. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience where a guest has overstayed his welcome and you can't get rid of him, right? This is the Yetzer Hara. He starts out as a traveler, just passerby, and you do the right thing by the Yetzer Hara and you give in to him a bit and you say, okay, come into the house, I'll give you a meal. And then he becomes a guest and you can't get rid of him. And that's how the Yetzer Hara, that's how the Yetzer Hara wheedles its way into your life. And that's the part of this parable that Natan is telling David that he failed because he gave in to that Yetzer Hara. A little part of the parable there, which is just hidden in the parable there, but it's worthwhile looking at. Yes, Philip.
My father, Oliver Shalom, used to say when we had guests on Friday, he used to say after we'd eaten and we'd sang mirrors and this and that, the other, he said, I don't know what you people are going to do, but I'm going to bed.
Okay, well,
but talk about outstaying your welcome.
Yeah, well, it's these things happen. I once went to a place where immediately after benching, I was handed my coat. I was literally handed my coat.
Here's your
so,
coat.
yeah.
What's the hurry?
Yeah, that's right. So this is the Yetzer Hara. Okay,
One,
so that's
one strange thing on the parable, though, is that this rich man actually invited the wayfarer in. Why, if he was such a nasty individual, why would he actually invite the wayfarer in? I know it's a parable, but if I'm just looking at it.
Okay, I'll tell you what I think, and then I'll be interested. No, I'll tell you what. Let's see what anybody else thinks before I tell you what I think. Okay, Michael's got a question. If this rich man is such a bad fellow that he's going to nick this poor man's lamb, why is he invited this wayfarer in the first place? That's a good thing to do, no? I mean,
because David was the king. This is the parable. And of course, being the king, you invite a king into a king comes to your house, knocking at the door. You bring him in. Of course you do, wherever he is.
But the wayfarer is not the king. The rich man's the king. Why did the rich man invite the wayfarer in the first place? It's a good question, that, Michael.
Maybe he was intending to steal the poor man's sheep all along, and it was a good excuse.
Could be. Could be. Anyone else got a suggestion?
Where does it say he invited him in?
Well, it says he prepared for the guest that had come to him.
Yeah.
So he must have invited him in. He's making him a meal.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I think. I think it's a good question for a start. There are people out there that like to show how wonderful they are. Right? So you invite a guest in. And what is it about when a guest comes to you? It's about you giving something of yours to the guest, right? You feed the guest. You have, presumably in a normal situation, a guest comes to you. You have worked to earn money, and with that money you've bought food, and you are giving that food to the guest, right? That's the concept, isn't it, of inviting a guest? That's how it works, right? So generally speaking, that's a good thing to do. And if you are somebody who invites guests in, people will think that you are a good fellow because you are giving of something of your own to this guest. That's what it's about.
It's a mitzvah.
It's a mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah to go and steal somebody else's food to give you that.
No.
Right? Now, I don't suppose the rich man in the parable advertised the fact that he had nicked this man's lamb. He didn't go to the wayfarer in the parable. He would not have said, come in and I'll go and steal a lamb for you and feed it to you. I'm sure he said, come in, I'll give you a meal, it'll be very nice. You come and I'll go and do all that. And the wayfarer would think he's such a lovely fellow because he's given him a nice meal. What he doesn't know is he's going to nick somebody else's lamb. So I think that he invited him in the first place, Michael, to show what a great guy is in the parable. And that is not incompatible with somebody who goes and steals something, because actually he's not really a good fellow at all. And that's why he invited the Yetzer Hara in. Remember, we're talking about the Yetzer Hara. You and I would not invite the Yetzer Hara in. We'd say, no, get lost. I'm not having you anywhere near me. I don't need this deprivation.
Johnny,
Yes.
I can see where this is. David invited Uriah into his house to give him food and all that. But in his head, really, he only wanted to get him home to sleep with his wife. So he's also doing the same thing.
That is true. That is true. Yes. There you go. Jackie has proved the point in the parable there. So yeah, I think that's why he invited the guy in, because he's not a good fellow, and he's invited the Yetzer Hara in. Okay, so he's invited the man in, and he then goes and takes the poor man's thing. Right. One more thing just before we go on to David's reaction. I want to point out this word here, vayachamol. Vayachamol. What's the root of that? What's the root of that word? Where have we seen it before?
Chemla.
Come on, Peter, you're normally good at this.
Chemla.
Chemla, very good. What does it mean?
Chemla is
L'chadodi. L'chadodi.
What does it mean? What does chemla mean?
Forgiveness.
Yeah,
Forgiveness, no?
no,
Not really. No, not really forgiveness. It means pity. Pity. It means pity.
Pity, yeah.
Pity.
Yeah.
What should that word, if we say it means pity, where would we say that David has not behaved nicely? Because he didn't have pity on the on Uriah, right? He didn't have pity, or in the parable, the rich man did not have pity on the poor man, right? He didn't have pity on him. He had no rachmanus on him. Yeah, no rachmanus on the guy. He took his one and only you. He took him. So what's all that about? It's a play on words, because here we have, he had pity on himself. Vayachamol lakachat mitzono. He says to himself, it will be a shame to take my own food here. It will be a shame to take one of my own lambs to feed this bloke. I'll have pity on myself and on my own money, and I'll nick somebody else's. Right? Doesn't matter that I've got plenty. It's a chaval. It's a shame that I should take my own stuff. I can take his. And so this is an irony. This word vayachamol is used in an ironic sense, because it's vayachamol is exactly what he didn't do. He had the pity on himself when he should have had the pity on the poor man. And what's that demonstrating? What's that demonstrating? It's demonstrating that in the parable, the guy had no morals. The rich man had no morals. He was only interested in himself. Only interested in himself. Vayachamol lakachat mitzono. Right? He's telling you why he took this other person's lamb. Because he didn't want to use his own. Because he thought, I think somebody, I think Jackie said earlier on, this rich man thinks too highly of himself and doesn't care about anybody else, doesn't care about this poor man. And so this word vayachamo is used in a very ironic sense. I just want to have a look over here. There was one here. Yeah. Now, in verse 6, you'll see in a second that it uses the word again. Natan uses the word again. Natan uses this word to describe the rich man. But when we'll do it in a minute. We'll get to this word at the end of verse 6 in a second. It's the same word, and you'll see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the irony of it. Verse 5, Jeffrey, and 6.
David was very indignant about this man, and he said to Natan, "As Hashem lives, any man who does this deserves to die."
Stop there. Stop there. Right. Okay, let's just analyze this. Forget that David is a bit dense and has not realized that Natan's talking about himself. Let's put that to a side for a moment. David hears the story of this man. In Ganson, what's he done? What has this rich man done?
Stolen a man's ewe.
Stolen a man's ewe. Okay.
Who was a member of the family.
All right. Okay. He's stolen the man's ewe. It's still a ewe, Jeffrey. It's still an animal.
But he was a close member of the family.
All
It was his
right.
only animal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right. It's still okay.
And it was his only animal.
It was his only animal. Okay. What is the punishment for stealing an animal?
Plus something, plus, is it 20% or whatever else?
All right. No, but I know what you're talking about. We'll come to it. All right. Let me ask you the question differently. What is not the punishment for stealing an animal?
Death.
The death penalty. Right? What's David getting his knickers in a twist about this fellow for? Give him the correct punishment according to the Torah, which we'll look at in a second. What's he saying he's liable to death for? It's the death penalty is not for stealing. You don't get the death penalty for stealing.
David's a hogshead, so he goes in feet first.
Okay, he does. He has absolutely. But I'm wanting to know why he's saying this man is liable to the death penalty. Back in the day, if you stole something, you got sent to Australia. You know,
he's losing his sort of rationality, David, and his.
Well, maybe not. Let's have a look. Yeah. Let's have a look. I'm leading you down. I'm doing my usual trick here. I'm leading you down a blind alley. But we've not quite got to the end of the blind alley yet. So just bear with me.
One other thing, Johnny. If David was clever, he's supposed to have these two Torahs with him all the time. He's only got to look in the Torah and see what the punishment is, because it says what all the punishments are. Let's
see what the punishment actually is.
Go on.
Where will you find the punishment for stealing a lamb?
Fourfold for the ewe is what it says. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
That's what it says going on.
It does say that. Well spotted.
Doesn't make sense, does it? Initially it says he deserves to die, and now it says he must pay fourfold.
Okay. Well, maybe he wants him to do both. But let's do that. We haven't done verse 6 yet, so let's do it. Go on, Jeffrey. Verse 6.
And he must pay fourfold for the ewe, because he did this deed and because he had no pity.
Okay, there's the pity bit again. Okay, you see that? Lo chamal, same as vayachamol over here. He had no pity. It's not true. He did have pity, but he only had pity on himself, not on the other fellow. So it seems now. What's the first word that you said in the translation of verse 6, Jeffrey?
And.
Okay, what does and mean?
Well,
man give him the fourfold.
Not only does he deserve to die, but he must pay fourfold.
Correct. In addition to. And means in addition to. Therefore, he's not changed his mind. He's given him 2 lots of punishment. He's given him the death penalty, and he's got to pay fourfold. Now, is that the halacha?
No.
Okay. Where is the halacha?
In one of the Sedras, it gets a whole list of what the forfeits are.
Correct. I'll give you a clue. You're going to hear it in a couple of weeks.
Yitro.
No, next one after that. Oh, come on. What's after Yitro?
Shabbos.
Shabbos, yeah. After the Shabbos after Yitro, what will we read? Jeffrey, I'll give you a clue. It was my dad's bar mitzvah.
Oh, Shekalim.
Yeah,
No,
No.
no.
Mishpatim.
Mishpatim, yes, Mishpatim.
Yeah.
Oh, that was hard work getting that out of you lot.
Sorry about that.
No, I was muted. I knew it.
You were muted. Well, that was a good thing. Anyway, there it is on the screen for you in Parshat Mishpatim. It's the last verse in chapter 31, I think. Yes, there it is. Read it out for us, Jeffrey. It's on the screen.
If a man steals a bull or a lamb and slaughters it or sells it, he shall pay 5 cattle for the bull or 4 sheep for the lamb.
There you go. There's the halacha. 4 sheep for the lamb. So
they must pay fourfold.
Right. So he's got to pay four sheep for the lamb. Right. Let's go back to Shmuel and our story. Now, it seems straightforward to me, right? He's stolen a lamb and he's got to pay 4 sheep. Now, why? Let me ask you this question. If it's so straightforward, why don't you just take it to one of the junior courts? Any first year Dayan student will tell you what the halacha is. You don't need to go to the king for that. What kind of things do you take to the king? We know this from Shlomo. What kind of things do you take to the king?
Life and death.
Difficult cases that are unusual, cases that the halacha is not clear. We need to have clarity. Maybe there are some different circumstances, extenuating circumstances, the opposite of extenuating circumstances, making things worse, aggravating circumstances, that's the word. So there must be something special about this case, because it can't just be the fact that he stole a lamb. Because if he just stole a lamb, we know what the halacha is. Mishpatim tells us you have to pay 4 lambs. And that's why David says he's got to pay 4-fold, because David knows the halacha. So why is he putting him to death? Why is David putting him to death?
Because he was angry about the situation. As I said before, he's a hothead, so he goes in feet first.
He's very angry. And why is he angry? Why is he angry about this? He's angry.
Found out.
Yeah. Well, there's it's a shame Michael Solomon's not here with us today, because he will tell you that in psychology there is a concept of transference and projection. A person projects his own feelings onto somebody else. I don't know if you've ever done this. I have to admit that I have done this when I have had a little angry word with the missus, right? And I'm angry about something, and I come down and she's as calm as anything. And I come downstairs and I say, "What are you so angry about?" Right? I'm the one that's angry, and I've projected my anger onto her. That's called projection. And transference is you transfer your guilt onto somebody else. And David subconsciously knows, even though he's not consciously clocked Michael like you think he should have done, right? Subconsciously, somewhere deep in the recesses of his mind and his soul, he knows.
He's wondering.
And he knows that actually what he's done is not just to steal a lamb. He's not just stolen a lamb. And so somehow deep inside him there is this transference onto this man who he thinks is a real case, by the way. Consciously he thinks is a real case. Subconsciously, I think that he knows it's him, and he knows what he's done. And this is part of his mea culpa in a way. So there is an opinion that says that the reason that Natan brought this case to David in the first place, this parable, in the guise of a case that David has to do, is because of the aggravated circumstances, right? If you're a judge and you've got a tariff that you can give somebody, right? In the UK law, at least, you get a third off if you admit your guilt straight away, right? Did you know that, by the way? If you in a court and you plead guilty right at the beginning and save the crown the aggravation of having to prove that you're guilty, you get a third off your sentence straight away. I happen to know that because my brother-in-law told me, and he's a judge. Not that I know it personally, because I've never, thank God, been in that situation. However, that is the case. So if you admit your guilt, you get time off. Now, if you don't admit your guilt and you make it, the harder you make it for the crown to prove its case, the more you dig your heels in and the more you don't show any remorse, the worse the punishment in the court. And that's what's gone on here. This case of the parable, this is aggravated theft. It's not just a theft of a lamb. As you pointed out, Jeffrey, it's theft of a very, very precious lamb. It's a lamb that lives in the bosom of this man, right? This is not just stealing a lamb. This is stealing something very precious. And he's a poor man. He's only got this one little shepselach, right? He's only got this one little lamb, and you've taken it off him, and you've got loads of them. You can see how this is an aggravated case, and that's why it's come to David. Natan knows the halacha. He knows he's got to pay fourfold this case, but he's brought it to David ostensibly, the parable at least. He's brought it to David because it's such an aggravated case. And that's how he's presented it to David, so that when the penny drops, or when Natan actually tells David, actually, this is you, which we're going to come to in the next pasuk, David is hung by his own petard. He's already said what the punishment should be. If you like, Natan's been a bit sneaky on David, because he's made David give a psak, which is about himself, and then Natan can say, well, yeah, you've spoken. You're absolutely right, David. That was a shocker what you did. And so that's why Natan has brought this case. That's why he made up this parable, so that he can get David to realize what a terrible thing it is that he's done, and bring it, according to my theory, to bring it from the subconscious to the conscious.
Also, verse 5, in some ways, you look at the case of the 10 martyrs, where the ruler says, what would you do in the situation where you've kidnapped Joseph, put him to death? It sounds very, very similar in a way.
Yes. Very good. I had not thought of that. Just to elaborate on that a little, there's a chazal that talks about that when the 10 martyrs were put to death, the Asara Haruge Malchus, which all of whom didn't live contemporaneously, so it didn't all happen at one time. So it is allegoric, but nevertheless, it's spoken about. You're quite right. It's as if the Romans said to the Jewish people, well, you deserve to die, you 10 lot, because you represent the 10 brothers of Joseph who sold him into slavery and tried to kill him and effectively killed him. And so you deserve to, there were 10 brothers that deserved to die, and they didn't. And so now I, the Roman emperor, am correcting that historical wrong, righting the wrong, and I'm putting you 10 to death for that. Very, very honorable emperor we have in those days. But you're right, Michael.
Johnny,
there is something that, yes, Jackie.
Can I jump in? And I take it very differently. I think on verse 5, David was very indignant. The penny dropped. he realized what was happening. And when we got to the bit where we said that the sheep was like one of his children, he killed Uriah, and perhaps Uriah's head of the family had children, and the two were synonymous.
Well, I think that's part of the parable, isn't it? Yes. I'm not sure that at this point the penny's dropped, though. Let's just see. Let's go on.
I think there's no question about David understanding what's going on. I think we know that he was a great Talmid Chacham, and I don't think there's any doubt that he didn't understand it, but because of sort of his emotional turmoil about the whole event caused him to lose his rationality completely.
Okay, and, that's another way of saying that he's repressed it, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I agree with that.
I think on that point, Johnny, there's what Peter just said. The fact that he uses the expression ben mavet, which doesn't necessarily mean somebody who's due to be executed. Ben mavet is a despicable person in common speech as well. The ben mavet is what Shaul called David because he had rebelled against him. He called him a ben mavet.
All right. Okay, let me take you up on that because that's an interesting point. Yes, is this relevant to what Ivers just said, David? Yeah, you're muted. David, you're muted.
No, you carry on with Pete.
Right, so I'll deal with Ivor's point, and then we'll come to David. So you're right, Ivor. Ben Mavet could mean he deserves to die because he's such a despicable fellow. Right? What a terrible thing today. He deserves to die. It doesn't mean halachically he's chayav misa, but he's a ben mavet. In Shaul's case, 1 second, Philip, I'll come to you after David. In the case of Shaul describing David as a ben mavet, that was slightly different. That was the expression we would use today for that is you're a dead man walking.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm coming for you. You're a dead man walking. Whereas this is slightly different. But the expression is an unusual expression. You're quite right to point it out. And in fact, the Mefarshim do say that this David is not saying that actually he is chayav mita. He should be put to death with one of the 4 death penalty modes. He's saying that is such a despicable thing to do that he deserves to die. Yeah. Actually, the real punishment, says David in verse 6, is he's got to pay 4-fold for the lamb. I'm sorry, that's the halacha. Really, he deserves to die because he's such a rotter. But the punishment is to repay it 4-fold. David,
if you can allow me to make 2 points. First of all, one on this, Koren makes a very interesting observation that according to the code of Hammurabi, someone who stole and didn't have the means to pay the 4-fold or whatever the restitution was liable to the death penalty.
Okay, on that point, I'm going to come in a minute to examples in our own Torah where the death penalty is suggested for theft. So although you're right, and I also read that about the Hammurabi code, which is very interesting, I don't think we even need to go onto the Hammurabi code. And I'm going to come to it in a minute. Second point, David.
Going back to the word vayachmol, interesting choice of language, parallel case, using the same verb for another king who's castigated by a Navi. And there are also sheep involved. And this king also says chatati in response.
Shaul.
Yeah.
And I think you're referring to the story of Agag.
Exactly.
Okay, fine, good. Okay, so let's just talk about that for a second. Well, Philip, I'm coming to you in a minute. You can put your finger down. I haven't forgotten. So the story there, have you got a chapter for us in Shmuel Aleph?
I'll find it for you in a sec.
Okay, so while David's looking for the exact chapter, which I can show you, what happened was, you know the story. This is what did...
What happened?
We lost Johnny.
You're frozen,
Yeah.
Johnny. Unfortunately.
And he also kept alive the animals, right? And what does Shmuel?
We missed your explanation, Johnny. You froze.
Okay, so the story of Shaul and Agag, you are familiar with that. Hashem says to Shaul, go and destroy Amalek, everything, right? People, women, children, animals, a lot. And he keeps alive Agag, and he also keeps alive the sheep. And they sacrifice the sheep to Hashem. And Shmuel comes along and says, why have you done such a thing? And he says, well, I had pity on the sheep because I wanted to sacrifice them to Hashem. And the word is used there is vayachamol. Have you found it, David?
Yeah. Shmuel Aleph, chapter 15, verse 9.
Okay, let me just get that up for you. Chapter 15, verse 9. Just wants to make sure I'm a human being before it lets me do that. There we go. Shmuel Aleph 15, verse 9. Okay, there we go. All right, let's go from 7. Jeffrey, please. 7, 8, and 9.
And Saul smote Amalek from Havilah until you come to Shur, which is in the front of Egypt. And he seized Agag, the king of Amalek, alive, and he completely destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. And Saul and the people had pity on Agag, and on the best of the sheep, and the cattle, and the fatlings, and on the fattened sheep, and on all that was good. And they did not want to destroy them, but everything which was vile and feeble, that they utterly destroyed.
Okay, so there's our word. Well done, David, for recognizing that. Vayachmol, Shaul v'ha'am al Agag. They had pity on Agag and on the best sheep. Here, vayachmol lakachat mitzono. He had pity to take his own sheep. He took somebody else's sheep. Now, David, I wonder if that's deliberate. And I wonder whether, it's not something I'd thought of, I hadn't thought of it. I wonder whether that is deliberate, whether Natan is using that word and the author of Tanakh here is using that word to compare David's actions with Saul's actions. Because if we go back to those psukim, what is the very next thing that we hear, Jeffrey, verses 10 and 11?
And the word of the Lord came to Shmuel, saying, I regret that I have made Shaul king, for he has turned back from following me, and he has not fulfilled my words. And it distressed Shmuel, and he cried out to the Lord all night.
Okay, so what's happening here?
It's a turning point in the kingship of both Shaul and David. And as I said earlier, both of them utter the same response to the Navi, Chatati.
Did you freeze then?
You did.
I froze. Right? Okay. So what I was saying was, I wonder whether the use of Vayachmol here in our chapter, here, Vayachmol, is the author of Tanakh hinting to us that actually David was in the same boat as Shaul, and Shaul's punishment was that he had the kingship taken off him. So maybe this pasuk here, Natan is telling us, actually, David, you deserve to have the kingship taken off you because you did the same sort of sin, as it were, as Shaul. Very good, David.
It's even worse.
It is even worse. Yeah, I think it's worse. Yeah.
I think maybe I broke up at the time. I made the comment that this was a turning point in the kingship of David, the same as it was a turning point in the kingship of Shaul.
Yeah, absolutely. That's excellent, really excellent. Is that something you read there, or is something you made up?
I thought of the word immediately in the Shaul story.
Well, we need to find out whether that is anywhere else. Otherwise, it goes in Chidushay Poleg. So I just have to make a note of Vayachmol. Vayachmol David v'Shaul. Okay, I'll remind me later on. Yes, Philip's been waiting patiently.
To go back to Ben Mavet, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Shmuel uses that term referring to Agag just before he kills him. I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's another thing about
Let's have a
that.
look. Hang on. We've got the death of Agag at the hands of Shmuel over here. Here we go. Vayom Shmuel higishu elai et Agag melech Amalek vayelech elav Agag me'adonot vayom Agag achein sa mar hamavet. Mar hamavet. Ben Mavet. Mar hamavet. Surely the bitterness of death has turned. It was Agag that used that word mar hamavet.
Yes, I'm sorry. I made a mistake.
There is
but
the expression
about
ben
that. Ben Mavet is used today very often in referring to terrorists who from Gaza or from wherever. They are called Bar Mavet or Ben Mavet by our leaders.
Yeah.
It's been used. It's used in the present day.
Yeah.
They're dead men walking. Yeah.
Shmuel Aleph,
dead man
chapter
walking,
26.
like we said. Shmuel Aleph, chapter 26,
verse 16.
26, verse 16. Okay, there we go. This is the story of
Ki ben mavet atem ata, yeah.
Here we go. There we go. B'nei mavet atem asher lo shmartem adonechem al Mashiach Hashem. So this is the story where they want to kill Shaul, yeah.
Yeah.
And they didn't. He didn't kill Shaul when he could have done. And David says to Shaul's guard, Avner, who later on becomes David's mate, he says to him, "You lot deserve to die because you didn't look after the king properly." Right? Did he kill them? No, he didn't. So there is a proof, Ivor, for your point. Thank you, David. Ki b'nei mavet atem. You deserve. Look how we translate it on the screen. Jeffrey, read verse 16 for us.
This thing which you have done is not good. As the Lord lives, you are worthy of death. For you did not keep watch over your Lord, over the Lord's anointed. And now, see where the king's spear is, and the jug of water which was at his head.
There you go. You are worthy of death. B'nei mavet. Exactly as you said, Ivor. So if we go back to our pasuk here, when he says he's a ben mavet, and ben mavet, he doesn't necessarily mean he's chayav misa. He's worthy of death. All right, I'm going to stop there because the internet is poor for some reason today, and we keep getting freezing, and we're up to overtime anyway. What we will do next week is we will see Dave. We've now seen David's response. David has said what he's said, and Natan in verse 7 is going to say to David, Michael, sorry, but we're going to get one anyway. David is going to say, Natan is going to say to David, this parable is all about you, David. And we'll see how we get on with that. Okay, so not next week. I am at the conference that I said I was going to be at today. So there will not be a shiur next Sunday. Please God, the following Sunday I'll be in Manchester. But there's no reason why we can't do a shiur from there because 10:15 is 8:15 in Manchester. No reason why I can't do it. So Be'ezrat Hashem, in 2 weeks' time, we'll carry on from verse 7.
Okay, Shavua Tov.
Here.
Bye. See you later.
For those great
Thank you, Johnny.
Excellent.
Bye.
Shavua Tov.